Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Boxing Along the Beltway. Very special and, quite frankly, very sad edition of Beltway Boxing News and Notes. We're not even going to get into the sponsorship on this one. This is something that I feel I have to do. As we mourn the loss in the boxing community around the world of truly one of the legendary names in this business. We received word today that Lou Duva, the noted trainer, promoter, manager, just boxing iconic personality, Hall of Famer, passed away today. He was 94 years old. He'd been ill for some time. But if you want to talk about someone who was a real boxing guy, Lou Duva is the Webster's Dictionary definition of a boxing guy. And here's what I mean by that. When I first started covering boxing in this area, and I'm not going to go through his career and his life because you can find that out. It's very simple. And a lot of people know his life and what he did. So I'm not going to go into that. You can read that elsewhere. But this is going to be a personal tribute for me, for Lou Duva. When I first started covering boxing back in 1984, we were, quite frankly, a minor league town when it came to boxing. I mean, yes, we had champions like Simon Brown and Maurice Blockett, and of course, Sugar Ray Leonard started things really in this area in the 70s. Boxing wasn't considered a major league town. And I think maybe for some people, maybe it still isn't, but I think it's a lot closer to that definition now than it's been since the 90s. But as boxing started to grow in stature here in the Beltway, many people started to take notice. And when I say many people, I'm talking about many big people in the business, people that are on TV a lot and are very well known. And of course, everybody knew Lou Duva from all the great champions that he trained over the years. Of course, he trained almost that entire 1984 Olympic team. And of course, the big guy there was of course, Pernell Whitaker. But he trained all of them, Evander Holyfield and Meldrick Taylor. I think he trained Breland for a little bit as well. And we knew him from that and how great a personality he was in and out of the ring. But when I say Lou Duva was a boxing guy, he was the first big name in the business that I had a chance to meet. And it wasn't at in Atlantic City. It wasn't at Madison Square Garden. It wasn't at, even at the Blue Horizon in Philadelphia. It was at the Showplace Arena in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And I'll never forget that. We were doing our TV show, Boxing Spotlight, and Lou Duva granted us with an interview. And he talked about, at that time, he was actually working with a couple of guys in our area. He was working with Reggie Showtime Green, and he had just begun to work with Ruben Ratman Bell. I don't know how far he got along with that one, but he really, I don't know how far he got along with Ruben, I should say. But he really, really loved Reggie Green. He was a big fan, and Green would spend time in the Pernell Whitaker camp, and he talked about how Reggie was one of the family, and they all went together, worked together, played together. And I remember asking Lou about what he liked about DC boxing and the Beltway boxing, and he loved this area. He really did. And that started sort of a relationship that I had with the Duvas and, the folks at Boxing Spotlight, the television show. We had put together a relationship with the Duva family. Not only Lou, but also the late Dan Duva and Dino Duva. They treated us very, very well. They really did. They invited us. They let us come up gave us credentials for a couple of bouts that the Duvas promoted, main events promoted in New Jersey, Atlantic City. Pernell Whitaker against Gary Jacobs was a part of that. And I believe they did, I think they did Lennox Lewis, Tommy Morrison, too. We had a chance to be up there. And, of course, we couldn't film anything, but we did all the interviews in the back. Talked to a lot of folks on that card, like David Tua and Andrew Galata, and this is early on in their careers before anybody really knew who they were. But Lou Duva would make a number of appearances in the Beltway and just show up. He wasn't one of those guys who was too big to appear at club cards. He loved the club cards because that's where boxing started. Much like what the late Angelo Dundee told me, if you had a certain boxer, and Angelo was talking about Jimmy Lang in particular at that point, but that's the way the world of boxing survives, is through those club shows, because that's where you see the prospects on their way up to bigger and better things. And goodness knows that's what I've been talking about ever since in this area. I mean, and that's what's happened in this area. When you see a guy like Gervonta Davis in the club show, you see a guy like Jarrett Hurd in the club show, and now they're world champions. That's an amazing aspect, and that's what Lou Duva always talked about. And meeting him he had no airs whatsoever. He didn't think he was bigger than what he was. He was a boxing guy, and I come back to that because he was a guy you could sit down at a table and talk to him about boxing, about life. And he was just so easy to talk to, so easy to get along with, that he was just first class all the way. I mean, he was it's hard because, again, I've been fortunate over the years to meet now all the major players, so-called, in this business. I've met everybody from Don King. I've met Angelo Dundee. I met Butch Lewis. I met Lou Duva, Cedric Kushner. And I've interviewed, I think, every one of them with the exception. Well, no, I did interview Butch Lewis. I'm sorry. So that's true. I've interviewed just about all the major players in this business. And then the last one I had a chance to meet finally was Bob Arum. I had never met him before until last year, when I met him at one of the shows here, and I actually asked him a question about Mike Reed. So that was the last one I had never met before, never had a chance to interview at all. But all the ones I've had a chance to meet. But Lou Duva came here on a regular basis around the country. Around the D.C. area. He would come to Michael's 8th Avenue in Glen Burnie like it was a second home. And he had connections here in Baltimore. He worked with people. Felix DeLoso, a good friend of mine who worked with the Taylor brothers, is mourning his loss, but he and Duva were partners at one time. And that's the type of guy Lou Duva was. Anybody could approach him. Anybody could talk with him. He would talk to you. And when I say talk to you, it wasn't like, I'll say a few words and then get out of my face. No, it was conversations back and forth. He listened to you. He talked with you, not talked at you. And he was a remarkable person in this business. He was so much fun to be around. He loved boxing. And it wasn't because of the money. He loved boxing because of the sport that it is. And his contributions to the sport are legendary. We all know that. But Lou Duva, the man, to me, was just as legendary as Lou Duva, the boxing figure. And we're going to miss him. And no question about it. I mean, when you lose people like Lou Duva and a guy who was a personal hero to me, Burke Sugar, these are the folks that we need in boxing. These are the type of folks we need in boxing today. Everybody's out for the money, and it is prize fighting. I get that. But we need people that respect other people in this business. This stuff with Angel Garcia, and I hate to go on this tangent, but I feel I have to. You lost, and your boy lost, and it was no doubt in the majority of people's mind that your boy lost. And for you to go on a tirade, expletive laden tirade over it, it's not going to change anything. And Lord knows you've got your share of gift victories. I think your victory over, Danny Garcia's victory over Lamont Peterson was a gift. Okay? So, I mean, when Lou Duva went crazy over the loss of, when Meldrew Taylor lost to Julio Cesar Chavez, he had more of a reason to do that than you did, than Angel Garcia did against Keith Thurman. I mean, you make a lot of cases, and people still make cases this very day, that Meldrew Taylor defeated Julio Cesar Chavez. I mean, you make a lot of cases for that. A lot of cases for that. That's fine. But Lou Duva kept going. Meldrew Taylor went on to win a world title after that. So Lou Duva was a class act, a great man, and someone who touched me deeply, because him being able to meet him knew that I personally can break the glass ceiling of meeting the creme de la creme of boxing, number one, and feel comfortable doing that. Number two, his stamp of approval of the Beltway as a boxing area. And he knew about the history of DC, the boxing town, but the current version, that current version of the 90s version, late 80s, early 90s version of boxing in the Beltway, he gave his stamp of approval that he was the first major star in the business to give his stamp of approval to boxing in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And I'll always be grateful for that. And we're going to miss him. No question about that. So I just wanted to give a tribute to him, because, I know he'd been suffering for a while, and he lived a long life. He was 94 years old when he passed away today. But there is a part of the history of boxing that has left us today, a big part, in my personal opinion. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Once again, a reminder, the Golden Gloves are coming up this Saturday at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. Hope I'll see you there as well. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Always remember to keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Take care.